Hong Kong. The name conjures images of soaring skyscrapers, vibrant markets, and a bustling harbor. It is a city that never sleeps, where the lights never dim, and the energy is palpable at every corner. It is a city that pulsates with energy, a global financial hub that glitters with promise. The financial district buzzes with activity, and the stock exchange is a testament to its economic prowess. Tourists flock to Victoria Peak, captivated by the breathtaking panorama of light and glass. The view from the peak is nothing short of mesmerizing, offering a glimpse into the city's grandeur. Yet behind this dazzling facade lies another Hong Kong, a city of stark contrasts, where the shadows tell a different story. A Hong Kong hidden in the shadows of towering buildings and exorbitant wealth. Here, the disparity between the rich and the poor is glaringly evident. This is a Hong Kong where survival, not luxury, is the daily struggle. The streets are crowded, and the living conditions are harsh. Hundreds of thousands of its citizens are trapped in a housing crisis of unimaginable proportions. The housing estates are overcrowded, and the subdivided flats are barely livable. Cramped into tiny, subdivided flats or even smaller coffin homes, they live in conditions that defy belief. These spaces are often no larger than a parking spot, yet they are home to many. These are not the images that grace postcards, but they are the reality for a significant portion of Hong Kong's population. The rundown housing and poor living conditions are a stark contrast to the city's glamorous image. The stark contrast between the haves and the have-nots is impossible to ignore. Luxury apartments stand next to old, dilapidated buildings, highlighting the economic divide. While tycoons dine in opulent restaurants overlooking the city, families struggle to afford basic necessities in cramped, windowless rooms. The disparity is jarring and ever-present. The gap between rich and poor yawns wide, casting a long shadow over Hong Kong's future. This economic disparity threatens the social fabric of the city. The city's famed skyline, a symbol of economic success, becomes a cruel reminder of the inequality that pervades its streets. The towering buildings hide the struggles of many. To understand the true Hong Kong, one must venture beyond the shimmering surface and into the heart of its hidden struggles. Only by seeing these realities can we appreciate the full picture. Only then can we begin to grasp the human cost of this crisis and demand a better future for all its citizens. The fight for a more equitable Hong Kong is ongoing, and it requires our attention and action. Imagine living in a space smaller than a parking spot, a place where every inch counts, and personal space is a rare commodity. This is the harsh reality for residents of Hong Kong's subdivided flats. These are not just small apartments, they are tiny, partitioned spaces within already small units. These cramped, often dilapidated units are carved out of existing apartments, with multiple families sharing kitchens and bathrooms. The lack of privacy and personal space is overwhelming. Privacy is a luxury few can afford. Every sound, every movement is shared with neighbors, making it difficult to find peace or solitude. The conditions are often appalling. Crumbling walls, broken fixtures, and a general state of disrepair are common sights. Poor ventilation, leaky pipes, and infestations are commonplace. These issues pose serious health risks to the residents. Residents, many of them elderly or low-income families, endure these conditions with little hope of escape. They are trapped in a cycle of poverty and poor living conditions. The lack of affordable housing options leaves them with no choice but to accept these inhumane living arrangements. The housing crisis in Hong Kong is a stark reminder of the city's growing inequality. Even more dire are the coffin homes, aptly named for their minuscule size. These spaces are barely larger than a bed, offering no room to stand or move around. These spaces, barely large enough to lie down in, offer a grim testament to the city's housing crisis. They are a last resort for those who have nowhere else to go. Renters, desperate for any shelter, pay exorbitant prices for these claustrophobic cubicles. The cost of living in these tiny spaces is disproportionately high. The physical and psychological toll of living in such cramped, unsanitary conditions is immeasurable. Stress, anxiety, and depression are common among residents. Families are torn apart, forced to live separately due to lack of space. The strain on family relationships is profound. Children grow up without proper sunlight or fresh air. Their development and well-being are severely impacted by these conditions. The dream of a decent, affordable home seems like an impossible fantasy. For many, the hope of escaping these concrete boxes remains just that, a distant dream. Behind the statistics and shocking images are real people whose lives are defined by this housing crisis. These individuals face daily struggles that many of us can hardly imagine. Their stories paint a poignant picture of resilience, despair, and the desperate yearning for a better life. Each day is a battle against the odds, a fight to maintain dignity in the face of overwhelming adversity. Mrs. Wong, a retired cleaner in her 70s, has lived in a coffin home for the past 5 years. Her story is one of many that highlight the severe lack of affordable housing options for the elderly. Her tiny space, barely big enough for a single bed, costs her nearly half of her meager pension. Despite the cramped conditions, she tries to make the best of her situation. "I have no choice," she says, her voice resigned. "The high cost of living leaves her with little to no alternatives. This is all I can afford." Her words echo the sentiments of many others in similar situations. A young couple, Mr. and Mrs. Chan, share a subdivided flat with their 2 young children. Their living conditions are far from ideal, yet they strive to provide a semblance of normalcy for their kids. The cramped quarters offer little privacy or space for the children to play. The lack of space affects their development and well-being. "We just want a safe and healthy environment for our children to grow up in," Mr. Chan explains, his voice laced with frustration. The dream of a better future seems increasingly out of reach. These are just a few of the countless stories that illustrate the human cost of Hong Kong's housing crisis. Each family, each individual, represents a narrative of struggle and hope. Each story is a stark reminder that behind the city's gleaming facade lies a population struggling to survive in the shadows. The contrast between the city's prosperity and the plight of its residents is a call to action for change. The housing crisis in Hong Kong is not merely a matter of bricks and mortar. It is a symptom of a much deeper societal issue: rampant inequality. Hong Kong boasts one of the highest concentrations of billionaires in the world, yet it also has one of the highest poverty rates among developed economies. The gap between the rich and the poor has been widening for decades, fueled by soaring property prices and stagnant wages. The city's economic success has primarily benefited a select few, leaving a significant portion of the population struggling to keep up. The housing crisis is a glaring manifestation of this inequality. It is a stark reminder that the American dream, so often touted as attainable in Hong Kong, remains elusive for many of its citizens. The Hong Kong government has faced mounting pressure to address the housing crisis. In recent years, it has implemented various measures, including increasing the supply of public housing and introducing rent control for subdivided flats. However, critics argue that these measures are insufficient and slow to materialize. The waiting list for public housing remains dauntingly long, often stretching for years. The new regulations for subdivided flats, while a step in the right direction, are seen by many as inadequate to address the root causes of the crisis. The government has pledged to tackle the housing affordability issue in the long term, but for the hundreds of thousands currently living in substandard conditions, tangible solutions seem a long way off. Section 6. A global crisis, a local struggle. Hong Kong's housing crisis is not unique. Cities around the world are grappling with similar challenges of affordability, inequality, and a growing gap between the haves and the have-nots. From London to New York, soaring property prices are pushing homeownership out of reach for many, while the supply of affordable housing lags behind demand. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated these issues, highlighting the precarity of many living on the edge. Hong Kong's situation serves as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that even in prosperous cities, a significant portion of the population can be left behind. It highlights the urgent need for innovative solutions and a renewed focus on social equality on a global scale. Section 7. The power of awareness. The first step towards addressing any problem is acknowledging its existence. For too long, the plight of those living in Hong Kong's subdivided flats and coffin homes has remained hidden from view, overshadowed by the city's glittering facade. By shining a light on this issue, by sharing the stories of those most affected, we can raise awareness and spark a conversation about the need for change. The more people understand the human cost of the housing crisis, the more likely we are to see meaningful action. Social media, documentaries, and news reports all play a crucial role in amplifying these voices and holding those in power accountable. Through collective action and sustained pressure, we can push for policies that prioritize the needs of the most vulnerable. Section 8. A call for empathy. It is easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the housing crisis, to feel powerless to make a difference. But it is important to remember that behind the statistics are real people with hopes, dreams, and the right to a decent life. Instead of apathy or judgment, let us approach this issue with empathy and understanding. Let us listen to the stories of those living in these conditions, understand their struggles, and work toward solutions that are both compassionate and effective. Even small acts of kindness can make a difference. Supporting local charities, volunteering our time, or simply raising awareness among our own networks can contribute to positive change. Section 9. A Future for Hong Kong? The housing crisis in Hong Kong is a complex issue with no easy solutions. It will require a multifaceted approach involving government intervention, private sector innovation, and a collective commitment to social justice. The future of Hong Kong, its reputation as a just and equitable society, depends on its ability to address this crisis. It is time for bold action, for innovative solutions, and for a renewed focus on the needs of all its citizens. Let us hope that the city, known for its resilience and entrepreneurial spirit, can overcome this challenge and create a future where everyone has a place to call home.